Oberon Zell of the
Church of All Worlds,
Church of All Worlds.
Great School of Wizardry, Green Egg Magazine,
And a,
fill in the blanks.
yes, and a whole bunch of other things. So, what's going on with you now?
With me personally, well, I've just recently moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and I've just gotten engaged to an amazingly wonderful priestess named of Rhiannon that I'm very much excited about. And we're in the process of getting a new house to move into together and begin a new life.
Excellent. And congratulations on the engagement.
Thank you. We're very excited about it.
So, recently, you've handed over grade school to Nicholas Kingsley. Tell us about that.
Well, Nicholas had been my protege and apprentice for a number of years. And as he moved up through the ranks of the school to become provost, and I was approaching my 80th birthday, I was kind of preparing him to become my successor over time. And it felt like the time was right. And so we staged a spectacular passing the torch ceremony. And so now he's the headmaster, and I'm headmaster emeritus. I'm still the founder, president of the board, and keep doing classes, but I'm no longer doing the day-to-day running of the school, and he's doing it very well, very good job. And he opened up our first really good physical campus in Whitehall, New York, and is doing fabulously. And I just couldn't be happier.
If I remember correctly from some of the pictures, that was a castle.
Yes, it is. Well, there was a castle that in the town down the street, but the grade school doesn't actually have the castle. It has an old manor house though that dates back to colonial days, so it's pretty cool.
Wow.
We're in good terms with the people at the castle, and we'll probably be doing some things there. They're good folks, but the castle was a bit more than we could handle at the time.
So, what's going on with the Church of All Worlds?
Well, our current major activity has been revivification of Green Egg magazine. Our previous editor died uh, not too long ago, and so we've had to develop a new staff and get it together, which I've been working on doing and trying to keep something of a schedule. Green Egg is the longest running magical publication ever published, 55 years right now, with 182 issues, and we're kind of excited about that. We've been online since about 2006. So I do miss the old print editions, but for those who may recall them, we still have a lot of back copies available to be ordered of them.
And where can that be located?
Well, if anybody wants to know where everything is, Church of All Worlds has all the stuff at caw.org. And then there's my personal website, oberonzell.org, that just has all the links to all of my stuff and activities. And it's grayschool.com is for the Gray School, and Green Egg Magazine, I think, .org. But they're all easily available. All the links are there. You can look in Wikipedia too. All the stuff is there, and me.
Yeah, you're all over.
All over the place, yes.
So, for those of us, newer viewers, huh?
Oh, great.
What is Ed and Theogenesis?
Ed and Theogenesis?
Yeah. Ed's upstairs.
Yes.
He's asking.
Oh, okay. Well, Ed Hubbard is one of my longtime friends and disciples and students and so on. And we're working out a relationship that he will be a major figure carrying forth the Theogenesis, the Gaia vision, out into the world to promote it. So, as my official disciple out there doing that stuff, and it's very cool to have somebody dedicated to doing that work, because I'm so busy, writing books and doing things like this that I don't really have time to do the promotion part of it. But it doesn't do any good to do all this stuff if nobody knows about it. So he's dedicating himself to make sure everybody knows about it.
Well, what is it?
Well, Theogenesis, which means the birth of the goddess, was the name of a paper that I formulated in 1970. That was the first vision ever articulated and written about what is now called the Gaia thesis, the concept that the entire planet Earth, the entire biosphere at least, is a single vast living organism whose conception can be dated back to the Cambrian explosion about 500 million years ago, when 2.5 billion years of single-celled life fermenting in the seas of the earth were fertilized by, I believe that must have been comets bringing in a new genetic component, the homeobox gene complex. And from that point on, a point of fertilization, the entire development of life has proceeded as one single living organism that we call Gaia, after Hesiod's Theogony, where he referred to the birth of Gaia as a child of Eros and chaos, essentially. And it's very apt and appropriate because I regard the entire evolution of life as the embryology of a single life form, whose body we are cells, equivalent to that. And by the same token, as we and all sentient beings have consciousness, then so does the entire biosphere. And we call that consciousness Mother Earth or Gaia. And just the oldest and most primordial concept of divinity that humanity has ever embraced.
Well, speaking of Gaia, I noticed that your millennial Gaia is here at our altar in the pagan room, and it's just about to be brought over by our lovely cameraman.
All right.
So, can you please tell us about her? This is the millennial Gaia, who's very heavy.
Sorry about that.
No, don't be.
I wish we had a more current version. That's one of the first edition. The more current versions have a lot more color and a lot more detail. But it's kind of neat to see the very first version being here.
Yeah, too heavy. Oh.
And that's a visual representation of the vision and the concept that I had back in 1970 that conceived of all this. So in her hair is the entire evolution of life on land, and in her legs are little tattoos that represent the evolution of life in the seas, and her arms depict the rainforests of the here. I can hold her for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, and
It is heavy, isn't it? Oh.
yes.
The more recent versions are made of lighter materials. I didn't realize how heavy she was. We have the moon over her left breast, representing the heartbeat of the planet, and her right breast is a cornucopia of the fruits and vegetables that nourish us. And of course, she holds the earth as her belly, the pregnant earth from which all life flows. Oh, there's lots of other detail. The whole tree of life is there in great detail, scientifically accurate in the back of her head there. All the details are there. The 13 sacred trees of the Celtic calendar are represented by the leaves in her hair. It's quite a piece of work and gives somebody something to look at for a while. And I just wrote a book recently called Gaia Genesis, Conception and Birth of the Living Earth. That's the whole story of all of this stuff, and has a beautiful color picture of her on the front.
How did you come about creating her?
Well, that was a project. When I first had the vision, I did not have skills at sculpture, and so I decided I wanted to do some sculpture. I was inspired by images of goddesses in the back of Eric Newman's book, The Great Mother, and they had all these photographs of different goddesses, and I thought, if I'm going to learn to do sculpture, I'd like to start at the beginning. So I started with the Willendorf figure, and all I had was photographs, So I had to do quite a few copies before I got it right. And eventually there was an Ice Age art exhibit touring that I was able to sit in front of for days and sculpt from. And then eventually a friend of mine attended an archaeological conference in Austria that the Fabers were actually cast plastic replicas from the original. And I was able to finally get that. So I started developing, then I did other Ice Age art figures because I was really fascinated. Then other figures of goddesses and eventually gods. And eventually I felt I had, after doing about 40 different images as altar figures, I felt I finally just knew how I could do this. I finally had the skills to do it. And I spent 2 years sculpting that particular image and putting into it everything that I had learned both in carving. I spent the whole time wearing surgical glasses, and carving with little tiny tools, It was quite an experience. I had her with me all the time, had her at the dinner table, had her in front of me watching TV. Most of the time I wasn't even paying attention. My hands were just doing the stuff, and I was conversing and watching the shows and stuff. And I looked down, wow, look at that. Because she sort of took over. I mean, the little tiny animals in her hair are all about that big, and they were all done individually in incredible detail.
I actually own one of them, and they're encrusted with gold paints
Oh,
and
yes,
things like that.
that's a later version. This one does not have all of that detail and coloring and painting, which is unfortunate. But it's kind of nice to see a very early edition. That's the first one off the shelf.
Where can you get it?
Oh, where can you pick one up?
Well, you can pick her up lots of places actually. It's on Amazon, but our own company is Mythic Images, and you can go to mythicimages.com or millennialgaia.com and find the original source, which also has some of my other figures that are still accessible.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you got to be careful about which ones to get because there are a lot of copycats out there.
There are knockoffs, which I find very annoying, and the knockoffs go all the way up to Disney's movie Moana, that features her as the culmination of the entire movie. And I'm still trying to get some negotiations with Disney about getting a settlement over that. It's interesting. Several of my art pieces have been picked up by movie studios and stuff. The latest is Warner Brothers, whose movie Mummies features my Enkidu's symbol in it. So, copyright suits. I won the one with MGM over the image that they used in the TV series The Handmaid's Tale. I finally managed to get that, but only by the intervention of Margaret Atwood herself.
What was the one that they used in the Handmaid's Tale?
They used the star goddess image that I do that shows the goddess with upraised arms on a crescent moon background. And
The Asteria.
Astera, right? Astra. But Asteria is the same goddess. It's where we get the name stars for astronomy and so on like that. It's the goddess of that.
And what's next for you? What about Church of All Worlds? What's next with that?
Oh, well, we're going to be turning back to a major update on Church of All Worlds. We've been working on updating our clergy handbook and training program. I've got to deal with updating our canons and all of that stuff, and we're getting prepared over the coming months to have a big new ta-da coming out kind of a thing. The church has always had a concept of systole and diastole. We've kind of adopted the phoenix as sort of our symbol. So there have been times when we've been very expansive and other times when we've contracted a little bit. And Eric can remember when we did the last phoenix resurrection ritual in 2009, right? So we're looking forward to doing that again because we've been kind of in the background for a while as the school has been taking my attention, and right now moving and getting a new home and a new wife is taking my attention. But the church is always there and continues to be there. It's just going to give it a lot more attention in the months to come.
For those who don't know, and our newer viewers on Pagan World TV and with the Corellian News Service, what is the Church of All Worlds and how was it founded?
Well, the Church of All Worlds was the first modern pagan church to be legally incorporated. And that the incorporation was accomplished in 1968. And we were initially inspired, and the name comes from a science fiction novel by Robert Heinlein called Stranger in a Strange Land. It was published in 1961 and really had a huge influence on the development of the counterculture of the 1960s because it raised a whole lot of fascinating perspectives. It was the whole thing was the perspective of a human who was raised on Mars. It was the child of the first manned expedition that crashed and everybody died, but there was one child that was born. And these ancient race of Martians that nobody knew about raised the kid in their culture. And it's sort of like we go to the jungle and get a chimpanzee and bring it back and raise it in our culture and teach them how to use hand language and ride bicycles and things like that. Imagine sending him back to the jungle and the influence he might have on the other chimpanzees. Teaching, we've actually been doing that lately. It's some exciting stuff happening. And that was kind of the theme. So another expedition 25 years later goes there, successful, finds this kid, now a young man, brings him back to Earth. And it's like, that's not his home world really, but so the reader kind of becomes one of the company of companions that are hanging out with this guy, and the reader is sucked into being one of those as he looks at all the institutions we take for granted, especially the really controversial ones, sex and love and religion and afterlife and politics and money and all kinds of stuff like that, from that outside perspective, which normally we are in it. We're like fish in water. We don't see it. But having that outside perspective was a marvelous device, absolutely incredible. And in that process of looking at these things and considering possible alternatives, he discovers, well, he's given advice that, if you found a church, you can do anything you want to, and the government can't mess with you once you've established it. And that's described in the book, how to go about that. So, and they called it the Church of All Worlds because it's meant to be all inclusive. And all of the other religions were exclusive. They were for our people only, and all those others are the outsiders. The idea of having a church that was deliberately inclusive was a radical notion. And so we took that and ran with it, and it worked. It's been an amazing experience. And right at the beginning, when we came out publicly, somebody asked, well, what kind of a church is this? Are you like one of those New Age churches? Are you some Christian sect? Are you one of those Eastern? Who are you? And having grown up with mythology and folklore and anthropology, which were some of my favorite areas, I said, well, I guess you could say we're pagans. And nobody had ever said that before. Nobody ever claimed to be pagan. Pagans was always somebody else. Those other people out there, we got to send the missionaries to convert the pagans, that kind of stuff. So that was a radical thing to actually claim for myself and my religion to be pagan. And then over time, I started hearing about some other group of people that followed the old ways, some people doing Greek stuff or Druidic stuff or Egyptian stuff. And I would contact them and say, you guys seem like pagans. We're pagans. Let's all be pagans together. And everybody said, yeah, that's what we are. We're all pagans. And we formed the first pagan alliances and the first pagan councils. And before long, we had a pagan movement.
Excellent. Now, one of the things that started in the Church of All Worlds, which a lot of people don't know, is water sharing and the part of May You Never Thirst.
Oh, absolutely. And it's delightful for me to go to visit rituals and covens everywhere and see them passing the chalice and say, may you never thirst, and thou art God, and thou art goddess, and may you never hunger, that kind of stuff. That all came from the Church of All Worlds. The theology of the Church of All Worlds is basically immanent divinity. Divinity is not something out there somewhere, not some male god with a big long beard sitting up in the sky making judgment, but divinity is a quality that is shared by all consciousness. That was part of the book. And we share that divinity. It's like water being poured or dipped out of the ocean, in countless vessels, of all different sizes and shapes, but it's all the same water, and spirit is all the same spirit that we all contain. And we're all very interesting, diverse, delightful, beautiful vessels. But within that is that shared spirit, divinity, God, and goddess, of course. And Stranger Strange introduced the idea of priestesses as well, and sky-clad rituals, and many things that we've adopted. Only pagan religions have priestesses, for example. Here at the Parliament, there's a wonderful group of very lovely Catholic women who have been pursuing getting ordained as priests. And I talked to them about that. Well, why not priestesses? Well, that's pagan. You say, yeah, it is. It is.
Thank you. Anything else? And anything else that we should know?
Gosh, lots of things you should know. We should know everything, I think. So,
how's Parliament been for you?
Oh, Parliament's been delightful. As the last time I attended one in person was in Toronto in 2018. The 2021 was only virtual because of COVID, but I did participate, but not quite the same. Going around and hanging out with people, getting in conversations, going to the feast things that the Sikhs put on, and sitting next to different people and sharing communion, sharing meals, sharing conversations. Everybody wants to take their picture with me, so I'm meeting all these different people from different places. And I think that's the most important thing about it, is people get to meet each other from different traditions in a very happy, very positive atmosphere, and nobody's at war with each other. Nobody's wanting to fight or persecute or burn down or shoot anybody else, and taking that back out into the world. This is a gestation place, gestation station, from which people will then take what they experience here going back in the world. They can say, well, those people over there that we used to think were awful are not so bad, And I think that's just a really good thing. And I love that kind of stuff. I based a whole religion on cherishing diversity. That's sort of the fundamental thing about it, And I'm very proud of the fact that the pagan community embraces so many people that would be completely rejected by other communities, And this has been an ongoing thing from way back in the beginning when we were inclusive to gay people. And now we're inclusive to trans people, and we're inclusive to, well, everybody who wants to be here. We're glad to have you, Come on in. You're welcome.
Now, tell us a little bit about Gray School and how that works.
Sure. Well, the Gray School had been an idea that I'd had in my mind as long as I'd had the Church of All Worlds in my mind. The Stranger in a Strange Land was published in 1961. And in 1962 was the first issue of a comic book series featuring a school run by a Professor Xavier. It was called Professor Xavier School for Gifted Children, i.e. the X-Men. And I wanted a school like that. I wanted to go to a school like that. By the time I got too old to go to a school like that, I figured I'd like to start a school like that. And so I took every course in education. I got a teacher's certificate. I actually taught in various schools at various levels, public school, private schools, college, high school, all kinds of places over the years. And I always thought that, well, I'd really like to do the school, but I was very busy doing the church thing because that seemed to be more urgent. I mean, there were a lot of really cool experimental schools coming up. There was the Waldorf schools, and the Montessori schools and things like that. And I thought they were doing great. Sent my kids to them, and taught. But the idea of actually creating such a school didn't occur to me for many years, but it was always in the back of my mind. And then came the Harry Potter series, and suddenly the idea of a school for magical kids, as it were, became a popular meme, a school of wizardry. And I said, maybe the world might be ready for the real thing. And I was we went to the first Harry Potter premiere. It was, 1999 or something like that?
I think it was earlier.
Maybe,
Yeah, it may have been earlier.
We were called by a Jewish shul in San Francisco, got a hold of Morning Glory and I, my beloved wife of 40 years who died of cancer 9 years ago. And they wanted to have a wizard and a witch come down and talk to them about what it's all about before they all went to see the movie, because they were nervous about, well, what is this stuff going to be about? So they booked the whole school to go to the movie, booked the whole balcony, but they wanted to have a little prep talk with the parents and teachers and everybody. So we were invited because we were the only witch and wizard couple they could find, I guess. So we came down in full regalia and we gave a nice little talk and we answered questions. And I remember one of the questions, one of the kids says, can you be a wizard if you're Jewish? I said, well, Moses is considered one of the great wizards of all time. And I believe he was Jewish. So I think you can, so it was great kind of stuff. So then we all went to the show. Well, we didn't have time to change. We're still on all this. But as we looked around, the whole theater was full of pointy hats, all only about that tall, but still there they were. All the kids had all dressed up for it. So we thought this was pretty cool. And we sat up there in the balcony, we watched the movie, which was really cool. And we had an insight, is that these kids who were looking at this movie, they're going to want to look for the real thing, because the theme, the mythos there was very different. In most of the movies of fantasy worlds, you can't get there from here. That's through the magic wardrobe or somewhere over the rainbow, or, once ago, magic land that doesn't exist actually, or long ago in a galaxy far, far away, but you can't get there from here. But the Harry Potter mythos said that, well, wizards and witches are right here among us. You just don't recognize them maybe, but they're here. They're your neighbors. They have their stores and their gatherings and, right around the corner. Well, that makes it accessible. So people are going to say, where are they? And we said, well, we're here, actually. How can we make ourselves accessible? Because they're going to come looking. And all of the groups and the teachings and everything were not available to kids. They were all closed to kids, but this was for like 11 years old, So one of the things we were doing at that time was making these statues of gods and goddesses and exhibiting them at the annual New Age trade show in Denver every summer. So we said, we should make some kid altar figurines. Because the first thing you do when you start a magical path is you create an altar and you start learning about that. That's the beginning of the whole thing. First, make an altar. And so we said, well, we'll make some god and goddess. So I did a Disney style, cartoon style god and goddess, young god and young goddess figure. And we took him to the trade show. And while we were there with the stuff, one of my friends who had written a number of books had a new book out, and their publisher had brought them there to do book signings and promotion. So she came over to the booth, and I congratulated her on her new book. And she said, when are you going to write a book? So I don't have time to write a book. I'm publishing a magazine. I'm making statues. I got a group marriage, family, got all this stuff going on. I don't have time to write a book. She said, I want you to meet my publisher. So she took me over to the New Page booth and introduced me to the acquisitions editor and gave this glowing idea. Oh, you got to get this guy to write a book for you because he's this and this. And okay, you know. So she said, well, have a seat and tell me, if you were going to write a book for us, what would it be about? And up to that point, I had not thought about writing a book. But what came into my mind is that, well, maybe I'd like to write something like a Boy Scout handbook for young wizards. You know, a book that would have everything you should know when you're setting your foot on the path. This is the basic thing, you know, the Junior Woodchuck manual from the Donald Duck series, if you know what that is. It has everything. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for kids. So, you know, I just started coming out of my mouth. And she said, sounds great. Send us a proposal. So, you know, one thing led to another. And I sent the proposal. They accepted it. I gathered together the Grey Council of the sages and mages and witchers and wizards that I knew, who had been publishing stuff in Green Egg over the years, and that I knew, and set forth a mission that we wanted to create a basic handbook for the next generation, for a new century, a new millennium, a new, you know, that would be and the book that you would like to get a hold of in your next incarnation. When you get your coming of age ceremony, you want to get handed this book. So let's write that book we want to get. Everybody thought that was a great idea. And 2 years later, in 2004, on Bridget's Day, the Grimoire for the Apprentice Wizard arrived in a box. And it became an instant bestseller. But as I was writing it, as I was developing it, it occurred to me that, well, I can't say this is a textbook for a school like a school of wizardry that didn't actually exist. And I figured, well, I can refer the readers to some online schools maybe. And I checked them all out. And none of them were suitable. They were all either promoting a specific religion, all the witchy schools, or they were too expensive, or they weren't available for kids. You know, you had to be 18. And for all these reasons I was looking for, I didn't want one that was promoting a religion, even mine, because I wanted this to be for mundane kids to be able to read this, you know, without freaking out their parents that I'm trying to convert them to some funny religion, even if it's mine. Didn't want to do that. Still don't, you know. But they should know stuff, you know, especially if they're interested in the field. So all of that compelled me to say, well, I guess this is another one of those assignments from the goddess. You know, if I want something and it doesn't exist, that means I got to do it. So I've always followed that particular plan, which is how I ended up doing all these goddess statues. If they had already existed, I wouldn't have had to make them. But so we founded the school, the Grey School of Wizardry, in 2004, and it was incorporated on Pi Day, and we opened our virtual doors at Lunasan of the 1st of August of 2004, expecting a big rush of teenagers because we kind of designed it for that. We were rather surprised when the vast majority of applicant students were adults who were saying things, well, I wish I'd had this when I was a kid, but it wasn't around, and I'm damned if I'm going to miss out on it now. So we had to retool right away and develop more adult programming and special stuff to accommodate that. And today, at least 4/5 of our students are adults, you know, some of them as old as I am, but it's still open to kids from 11 on who may want to join, because it's a great program. We have 7 levels of apprenticeship. It's an apprenticeship program, but you complete it, you get a journeyman certificate, and then you move into the journeyman. So it's sort of like junior high for apprenticeship, and high school for journeymen, and college for masters or magisters. So it's a program that follows the standard educational model that was in fact developed for the old mystery schools long ago, and it follows the guild structure that was designed for anybody taking up a trade. And we teach them the mysteries of the ages, right up to from everything from alchemy to quantum physics. There's 16 departments, and they're color coded, so it's all very cool. We have clubs and activities and ceremonies and virtual life. There's a whole program on Second Life, that people can do things, get together and stuff, and it's really cool. I'm really delighted with it, and now I have Nicholas carrying it forward.
Now, you mentioned Second Life. What do you have to do to be part of the school on Second Life?
Well, just join the school, and there's a way that you want to participate in the Second Life campus. You just click the button and it takes you in, gives you the information you need to know, and the proper links and instructions, and there you are.
And for those that don't know, you can find Second Life on secondlife.com.
Yes. And the Great School of Wizardry has a campus there.
And for those who want to join the Grey School, where can they find that?
Greyschool.com, Grey school, not Gray, Grey school.com. And just sign up.
Thank you very much, Oberon. And this has been Arlene Freed, Reverend Arlene Freed of the Corellian News Service at the Pagan Faith Room in the Parliament of World Religions with Oberon Zell. Back to you, Mary and Ed.
All right.